Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 98, noes 2.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we take up other business, I'd appreciate the opportunity on behalf of Ms. Jean-Pierre to interrupt the proceedings to acknowledge a distinguished group of young people who are in the chambers. At the back of the chambers with Ms. Jean-Pierre is Janet Andriano, who is the director of the Liberty Partnership Program at Farmingdale State College, and with her are a group of distinguished high school students, beginning with Woodline Etienne, who's an 8th grader at Milton L. Olive School. Also joined with this group is Brianna Dowden, who's a 9th grader at the Wyandanch Memorial High School. Also from Wyandanch is Akila Powell, who is a 10th grader. And joining the group is Monique D. Maury, who is from the Milton L. Olive School as well. These students are here to observe the proceedings, watch the legislative process, and are participating in a great program, the Liberty Partnership Program. So if you'd please extend the cordialities of the House on behalf of Ms. Jean-Pierre.
Certainly. On behalf of Ms. Jean-Pierre, the Speaker, and all the members, ladies, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly. We call this the People's House. We're always so pleased when students and young people come and share this moment with us. We hope you will have learned. We hope maybe it inspires you one day to emulate Ms. Jean-Pierre and seek elective office. But Ms. Jean-Pierre would say, wait a little while. But certainly we hope that that sparks something in you this visit. And so we welcome you here, and always feel free to come back. And thank you for your advisors. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd now like to go to page 24 of the main calendar and take up calendar number 163 by Ms. Nolan.
Clerk will read.
Assembly 3870A, calendar number 163, Ms. Nolan, an act to amend the workers' compensation law and the insurance law.
Ms. Nolan, an explanation is requested. Members, we are now on debate. Staff people, we are on debate. If you would, members, take your seat. Conversations to be kept at a minimum so that we may listen to the dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that courtesy. I really appreciate that. This is such an important piece of legislation, so I appreciate the opportunity to explain it. This bill, Assembly Bill 3870A, which, by the way, has many sponsors, will amend the workers' compensation law and the insurance law in relation to providing benefits for injury or sickness, pregnancy, or family leave. And the key section of the bill is right on the first page, including benefits for family care provided in the same policy or in a separate policy for disability resulting from injury, and adds the words family leave. In other words, it builds on the work of the people who had these jobs both in 1914 when workers' comp, in 1911 when workers' compensation first came into being, and then in 1949 with the creation of a temporary disability insurance fund. We've done it this way because we think, and we're mindful of the concerns of employers and small business people. This program has been in existence and been in effective existence for a long time. The expansion of temporary disability insurance to include the words family leave will give businesses a really clean and easy way.
1 minute, Ms. Nolan. We can hardly hear the member explaining the bill. So if you got all that movement, please keep those doors closed. We don't need any visitors in if they're not in now.
You know what? I think that sums it up, and I'll be happy to take the gentleman's questions. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. But I'm still having a hard time hearing, and I'm sure other people are also. Mr. McDevitt.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, on the bill.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, certainly I think all of us in this chamber would agree that when a person is either caring for an ill one or having a newborn or even an elderly parent, that can be very stressful, both physically and emotionally, time in one's life. And certainly if a person has to worry about their job, when being able to care for their families due to the loss of wages is something which should be very certainly cared for, and it's something we would like to go and provide for those people. My concern is the way that this bill is written and the way the benefits will be computed and how they be paid out. And my concern is as follows. Currently under the law, the maximum disability benefit we pay, and this goes back to 1989, goes to 50% of the employee's average weekly wage with a maximum of $170 per week. Now, we can certainly all probably agree that it's been a long period of time that's been increased, and there should probably be some sort of increase in the future. My concern with this bill is how quickly it increases it from the current amount to what this bill does. Under this bill, where currently it's $170 a week, this bill, by the year 2017, brings it to a maximum of $443 a week. And currently, it's based upon the average wage of the employee up to the maximum 170. This bill changed that definition to the New York State average weekly wage, which, according to the Department of Labor, is currently $1,266.44 a week. So you take that amount from 170 to the first year, going to $443 in the first year. Again, it goes from 170 to 443 in the first year. The next year it goes to $506, then $569, then $633. So from year one, it goes from 170, and then year 2020 goes to $633. Now, I will acknowledge that the bill does allow for an additional employee contribution, which right now is no more than 60 cents per week, and adding it to an additional 45 cents per week. But again, my concern is that we are increasing it extraordinarily rapidly in a very short period of time. And this is something which could have great negative consequences on employers when they're dealing with additional costs. And mind you, this $12.66 we're talking about on the average wage, that is not including increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So right now it's $12.66, but that could go up rapidly as well. So again, the concern is that, again, we're sympathetic with those families and those people who need to care for loved ones and certainly want to provide for them. But the way that this bill is written goes, again, from $170 to $633 in a very short period of time. One other concern with this bill as well is, as we know, under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, it exempts employers which has 50 employees or less. I think acknowledging that when you're talking small businesses, there is certainly an issue with them able to go and provide for those companies whereby you have to go and now have another employee come in and have those costs. This bill does not include any exemption whatsoever. So whether you're a major corporation with 1,000 employees or a company with 5 employees, you have to not only go and provide this benefit, but you're also going to have to hire someone else in order to have your business operate as well. So again, I understand the intent of the bill. I think it's an intent which should be commended. The problem is the way this bill is written has a very, very fast exponential cost on our businesses, which I'm not sure in this state that we can afford at this point. So those are some numbers I'd just like our members to consider when voting on this bill today. Thank you.
Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield?
Ms. Nolan, will you yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I happy to yield. I reviewed our notes from our last discussion, so I'm prepared to answer any questions the gentleman has.
The sponsor yields, Mr. Goodell.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nolan. I had a number of questions I was hoping you could help clarify on the bill and the way it's written. First, as I understand it, under this bill, you could take 12 weeks off to bond with a child who's under the age of 12 months, right?
Yes.
And is that 12 months measured from the beginning of that time period, or
12 weeks.
12 weeks? Right.
12 months is a lot. I'll go along with that. 12 months would be a lot, but 12 weeks is just about right. Yeah.
That the first day that you're taking the 12 weeks has to be within a year, or the end of that 12 weeks?
Well, these
in other words, do you have to exercise your right within the first 9 months, or do you have 12 months to exercise that right?
It would really depend on the employer. If your child, for example, if God forbid you had you had not taken leave and you had a healthy baby who developed an illness and you needed then to take the leave at that point, then it would be leave for illness. So, these are agreements that employers and employees will have to work out. It's a manageable thing. People leave now to give birth or to take care of an ill child. An employer is stuck if a valued employee leaves now. So we think that we've set up a reasonable mechanism. So yes, the answer would be yes. You could have that leave at any time.
Thank you. I note that in order to take the 12 weeks off to care for a family member, you have to provide a certification that you are a primary caregiver to that family member, correct?
Yes.
Is there any requirement that you have to provide that you are a primary caregiver in order to take the 12 weeks off to bond with a child?
Well, you have to have the baby. But I think the infant is the evidence that you have the need.
Well, this applies not only to your own children, certainly, and we would expect that kind of relationship,
Yeah.
but it also applies to stepchildren, right?
Yes, it does. When we spoke 2 years ago, we went on at great length about various relationships, and I think I used the phrase modern family. And so when we talk about the need to care for a child, you can have a child in your life because you're the grandparent, or you're the foster parent, or you're indeed the step-parent. Many people here in our chamber, I'm sure, have been step-parents to children in their lives. So we want everyone to be able to take these things. They're paying into this. It's an insurance policy. It is not a benefit or an entitlement. It is an insurance policy that you are paying into, that your employer purchases. And so we want to keep a nice big definition of what people can use.
And I appreciate that because I have 3 stepchildren that I've raised from a young age, and I treat them as my own children. But does this language anywhere require that there be any custody relationship with that stepchild? In other words, if someone marries someone else, let's say a woman marries a guy that has a child from a prior relationship, and the father doesn't have custody or primary visitation, maybe not even custody, maybe very limited visitation, they're still eligible, am I correct, under the language of this bill, to take 12 weeks off of paid leave? There's no requirement, is there, in the language of this bill that you have custody, visitation, or that you be in any way a primary caregiver to that child?
The bill uses the language primary caregiver. So if you were in that situation, you wouldn't be the primary caregiver, and so you wouldn't be eligible.
Well, it only uses primary caregiver in context of providing medical care, correct?
Well, I think the birth of a child, if you're not the primary caregiver, you would not be able to use it. I mean, those are the kinds of things, Mr. Goodell, if we want to repeat the word primary caregiver on another line, I'm always open to those kinds of suggestions. I don't think that I do not think our bill is a bill that encourages waste, fraud, or abuse. We certainly, however, don't want any waste, fraud, or abuse. So if repeating the phrase primary caregiver a second time would encourage you and others to vote for the bill, we could do that. We're very open to that. We're going to take this bill to the Senate and the governor. But I think it's clear, our thought on it is not your thought. We think it's clear that primary caregiver gives you the definition you need, and that should be enough. But, I'm always...
And I appreciate that openness, and I think that always leads to better drafting as we show that flexibility.
That's why we debate these bills, to get a better work product.
And thank you. I appreciate that. I note that in order to qualify for a serious health condition, of course, the relative, whether it's brother-in-law, sister-in-law, mother, father, whatever, has to be receiving continuous treatment by a health care provider. Does that then include skilled nursing?
Yeah, I believe it does, and we will check again. That I believe that the language talks about medical care. We didn't delineate within medical care, but we could, I suppose, look at skilled nursing care. Sometimes that gets you into another issue then. Is it care from an RN? Is it care from a home aide? Is it, the idea is that if you have a very ill person in your family and you need some time off, you can get this small stipend with the insurance policy that your employer purchases that you contribute to the cost for, and then you will be able to come back to your job a better employee because you will be grateful that you were able to take that time and that you weren't swamped and overwhelmed and passing out on the job. You know, you were able to deal with whatever you had to deal with and you come back to work.
And I appreciate all the questions you raised. And I think, to be honest with you, I think we might want to define some of those because under the current language, if mom goes into a nursing home, her entire family, not her spouse, all of her children, all of her grandchildren, all of her nieces and nephews, well, maybe not nieces and nephews, all the in-laws can take 12 weeks of paid leave from their employer to visit mom in the nursing home.
We don't agree with that
when we
definition.
talk about the scope of the bill, that scope, of course, directly relates to the cost. And so I appreciate your comments that we might want to answer some of those questions. I see that you can also take 12 weeks of paid leave where someone is sick in your family and the sole treatment is through prayer. And by the way, I firmly believe in the power of prayer, but it's where the sole treatment is based on prayer through spiritual means alone, but only if the prayer person, I guess, is accredited by a religious organization. Do we have recognized accreditation for prayer-only intervention? And does the individual who's exercising the 12 weeks of paid family leave, do they need some sort of certification that they're also praying? I mean, I would hope that they are. But I was just asking, what is the mechanism for that?
I certainly hope all these people are going to be praying for the assembly. But separate from that, and for all of us in it, there are clearly some people who don't believe in the medical system that we have and have part of it. I don't want to get into specific religions. Many of us could name some. I don't really think I should do that on the floor. The accreditation comes through the religion. I don't want to single out any religion here. I just don't think that's a good way to answer your question. We felt comfortable that there are, you know, it's not frequent. Remember, there were 182,000 people at the last count in 2012, I think is the numbers we have from the State Insurance Fund, who used the Temporary Disability Insurance Fund. Most of those, by the way, were for pregnancy. There are a lot of women in the state who would prefer to use it for child care, so we don't even anticipate the numbers going up that much. But the numbers of people who are in a religion that doesn't believe in blood transfusions or some other kind of advanced medical care, they have their own system of accreditation. We were just trying in some language to accommodate them, as we always do in our pluralistic state, so that people of all faiths can enjoy the benefits of this leave.
As pointed out by my colleague, Mr. McKevitt, the benefit under this law goes up from $170 a week to $372 a week in 5 years. That's a 372% increase in benefits. Are we reasonable to assume that the contributions to the program will also go up by a matching 300-some%?
We feel very comfortable with increasing the size of the temporary disability insurance benefit because, as you and your colleague pointed out, the last time these people got an increase was 1989. 1989 was the last time this legislature addressed temporary disability insurance. 1989 was a long time ago. So the amount has not really kept pace with what people need to survive. So what happens is they don't even use it. It's one of the reasons we differ with our colleagues in the Senate and with the executive at this point, though obviously we're very optimistic and excited to see the vice president come to town and to see the governor embrace paid family leave. But right now, they're talking about $126. We think that the assembly, there's over $100 million in the fund right now. We believe that there will be a cap on the employee contribution, but the employees will be paying more, perhaps as much as 40 cents a paycheck more, but 40 cents a paycheck to be able to take 12 weeks off and receive a small check is a good deal. But having said that, it's only $170 right now, and we're kidding ourselves if we think that since 1989, we are wrong, colleagues. We are wrong that that benefit has not been increased in all that time. So this is an attempt to really do something important, and that's where the money aspect comes from.
And I appreciate that the benefit has been frozen for a long time, and I support your desire to increase it. I just was looking at the revenue side, if I may, and so we're talking about a 370% increase in the payment side, some of which I would agree with you is justified.
It wouldn't be that amount if we had done it since 1989 on a regular basis. That percent, though, is
I
an incorrect
understand,
percent.
1989, I had dark hair, and I would like to think I was young and handsome, but I know better.
Still,
But,
no, still, don't sell yourself short, Assemblyman Goodell. Don't sell yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Nolan, and I appreciate all the prayers that others have been giving me since we started this debate on the other issue. But going back to it, we're obviously looking at more than tripling, almost quadrupling the amount going out. Presumably, in order to cover that and operate in a sound fiscal manner, we're going to need to make a relatively comparable, maybe not exact, but a comparable increase in what goes in. So I think it's safe to say, don't you, that the employee's contribution during that 5-year period would also have to go up by a factor of 3 or 4, as well as the employer's contribution?
No, we don't see that because, first of all, some of the statistics that we used earlier in the debate by your colleagues talks about the state average weekly wage. This bill caps the benefit at 2/3 of the average weekly wage, up to 50% of the average weekly wage. So we're really not talking about a giant check. And I remind my colleagues that California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, other states have a much, much more generous leave package, as much as $800 in, I think, Jersey, and maybe $1,200 in California. We're talking about $400 as the most, and most people will get far less than that. And we're talking about a small increase in $170 that hasn't been changed since 1989. So to say that there's going to be this 300% increase is really not, I think it's, that expression, there's lies and statistics. We can make the statistics look any way we like, but the reality is when you haven't had an increase since 1989 and you're talking now about a small increase, the costs are going to be very minimal. They're going to be associated. The policies are going to be bought. You'll see. You'll have insurers and other people telling you how great you are that you voted for this. It won't just be the public that's using the leave. There'll be a whole little industry, cottage industry, as there is in workers' comp, because we have that hybrid in our state where the state insurance fund and private providers provide these services. So it's going to be a win-win for everybody, colleagues, and an important step for our families.
I note that your bill is very clear. I'm looking at page 7 if you're interested in around line 19. Your bill is very clear that the 12 weeks of paid family leave would be in addition to any other existing collectively bargained agreement, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, as you know, some of our employers already provide paid family leave.
Mm-hmm.
So am I correct that if an existing employer already provides 8 weeks of paid family leave, if this bill passes, they're now providing 20 weeks of paid family leave, the 8 original plus an additional 12?
For sure of that. You have to negotiate this with your employer. So,
but I'm referring specifically to your language. Isn't your language very clear that absent a new agreement, well, I'll give another example. Let's say you provide 12 weeks now.
Right.
Am I correct? Under this language, you would be providing 24 weeks? So if one of your employees has a child, you won't see him for the next 6 months?
Right. Well, that's true, too, but they're not going to. It's a very valid point. The employer, having said that, though, has the option, if this plan goes forward, they don't have to offer those 8 weeks. They can continue to do it or not because they're going to be purchasing the 12. So we don't really anticipate, based on the evidence we have here and the studies that have been done, that I would love it if people were offering 20, but I don't really see that happening. And I don't see a lot of people wanting it. I think the 12 is about right, and that's what people will do. So if you're a good employer who has been able to offer people 8 weeks, your package that you buy from workers' comp and TDI will now be 12. So you'll offer the 12, and you're going to have the ability. You're not going to be forced to do 8 and 12 because you're going to constantly move forward as we move forward in time as this program gets rolled out. And I do want to say, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate, sometimes we kid, but I have great respect for the gentleman's legal abilities and his ability to read a bill, as I do Mr. McDevitt and all our colleagues on both sides of the aisle. We're happy to talk about these things going forward because there's a chance to make this bill real and live this year after so many years of bringing it to this House. So, we're happy to kind of discuss these finer points, but I think that we feel we've answered these questions. We think that the employer will purchase the 12 weeks.
Well, notwithstanding her admiration for your skill, your time has lapsed. But on your behalf, there is no one else, so you may take an additional time, lest you want to cede to one of your colleagues. They're leaving you in the pot by yourself. Good.
Surprisingly, Mr. Speaker,
So you may
I do
proceed if you have
more
more questions.
Right.
If you don't mind continuing to yield.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Mr. Speaker. And I, all kidding aside, we appreciate that. I think this is such an important issue, and I usually take a few minutes to explain the bill. I really tried to get right to the questions because I think that we really want this to be a unanimous vote. We think this is a vote that benefits every family in our state. And, it's just too critical not to take seriously. So feel free to take the other time. I ask our colleagues to indulge us that time.
Thank you, Ms. Nolan. I appreciate that. Right below the section that says that this insurance is in addition to anything else that's collectively negotiated is a section dealing with public employees. And if I'm correct, reading Section 13 of your bill, whether or not the public employer is obligated to provide the 12 weeks of additional paid family leave depends solely on the public employer's union. Am I correct? It's the union that decides, without any yes or no by the employer, the public employer, whether or not the public employer is providing the extra 12 weeks of paid family leave.
Well,
Am I correct?
that is correct. Those agreements are collectively bargained and negotiated now.
So
But I just want to point out to the gentleman, no public employee now has the ability to cut their own private deal with the locality or the state that they work with. They're covered under a larger plan, and they abide by that. When you take a job in the public sector, you know that you're subject to different rules than the private sector. So if I worked in a small real estate, I can probably have more ability to negotiate on my own. If I'm part of PEF or CSEA, I know going into those jobs that I have a collective bargaining agreement.
Right, but in this, when it comes to 12 weeks of paid time off or family leave, in this situation, under this language, it's not collectively bargained with the public employer. It is unilaterally imposed on the public employer at the sole option of the union. There's no impact negotiation. There's no cost negotiation. There's no negotiation over any trade-off. There's not even any negotiation whether this replaces existing paid leave. It's solely at the response and in the hands of the public sector employees, right?
Actually, in Section 211A, Part 2, it says they shall provide the benefits. I think there's a little, it doesn't say they must, right? So shall is different than must. And, these are the things I have admiration because not being an attorney, it took me, it's an amazing thing to come here as a regular citizen and find out that shall and must can have very different meanings in the legislature. So we don't say must, we say shall. And there is some room for the public employee unions, but there's also some room for localities, yes, to say we can't afford this, we have to renegotiate. I mean, contracts are not in perpetuity. Collectively bargained agreements have time frames. And so as that time frame moves through and expires, new agreements are negotiated. Again, that's what it means to be a public employee, and it should be more unionization in the private sector, but sadly that has gone down so much that so few employees are subject to that. One reason this bill is necessary, because we don't have the level of unionism we had in 1949. We don't have the level of unionism we had in 1979. We don't have the level of unionism we had in 1989. So we have to help our employees of this state be able to do the things they need to do to help their families. And this is a cost-effective, and I would go so far as to say pro-business way, because the TDI has existed for so long. Most employers, they buy the package, they pay the pennies, colleagues, pennies per head. It's just going to be a great thing.
Well, I appreciate your desire to make this or a pro-business proposal, although I haven't seen any support by any of the business organizations yet, but maybe that will come. I don't know. I do note, though, that the Family Daycare Advisory Council which has 15 members, only 2 of which represent any employers by your statutory language. And of those 2, neither has to represent the private sector. Am I correct? So under a 15-member advisory board, it's entirely conceivable that no one on that advisory board will represent an employer. Whereas it is clear that there has to be 2 from the AFL-CIO, there has to be at least 1 from a public employee organization, there has to be 2 that from others. I mean, it's very clear that while we talk about being pro-business, the advisory board is clearly pro-union. The opt-in decisions on the public sector are solely governed by the union. How can we assure the employers that this is a balanced approach?
Well, the legislature has some of those appointments, and I feel confident in saying that we as a legislature obviously would consider the private sector. I do not agree with your characterization of that board as a pro-union board, though there is representation from people who have collective bargaining agreements. And I do say I appreciate always the great level of depth that any member brings to the bill, but the conclusions, we can agree to disagree as to the conclusion of line A, line B, section 211. We think these provisions are tightly written. We think that they will allow the private sector to have input. They will provide 12 weeks of basic leave for families, and it will make people better and more effective employees. All of Western Europe has had something like this and much more generous for many, many years. Some of the most productive employees in the world live, for example, in Germany, and they get these leave programs. I don't want to go through every country, but we have to recognize California and New Jersey, Rhode Island have now had this for a number of years. We don't see an exodus of people saying we can't manage it. It's a manageable, tightly written program. I feel confident in saying the Assembly would look to private sector employers and that we certainly would value your input and any members as to who some of those people should be.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nolan. On the bill.
On the bill, Mr. Goodell.